Hi folks, welcome back to the channel. In today's episode we're going to be checking out the Naval Battle of Salamis from the Persian Invasions. We'll be getting into lots of naval conflict whilst also going through all the key details of the battle. If you enjoyed this video, please do consider dropping a like and subscribe to see the channel grow. Let's dive straight into it. So before we get into the thick of the battle, and trust me, that's coming very shortly, let's just quickly dive into why there was a naval battle here at Salamis in the first place. Back in 492, Darius I, who was the king of the Persian Empire to the east, had tried to invade mainland Greece once before, but he wasn't very successful, and the Greeks had repelled the threat by 490 BC, culminating in the Battle of Marathon. However, Darius' son, Xerxes, relaunched the invasion between 480 and 479 BC, and he had amassed a huge fighting force. The defence was predominantly led by Athens, who is famous for its capable navy, and the elite military force of the Spartans. In August of 480 BC, we have the famous Battle of Thermopylae, which included the last stand of the 300 Spartans. The Persians then head towards Athens. So in 480 BC, the Athenians sent their general Themistocles all the way over here to Delphi to consult the oracle about what to do about the incoming Persian invasion. The response came back that they should put faith in their wooden walls. While some attributed this to the defence of the city, Themistocles took this as a sign to put faith in the navy, giving him all the assurances he needed to evacuate Athens and draw the Persians into a naval battle, and he chose the Bay of Salamis as the preferred location, for its tactical and geographical advantages, which I'll speak more of later. So the Athenians could feel pretty confident with this decision, as they'd been investing heavily in their fleet since finding a rich vein of silver at Laraon over here, earlier in the 480s, and they were already really famous for their naval prowess. So as I get into position, as best as recreated in the game, I'll tell you about Athenian warships. So the Athenians used these ships known as Triremes, and they were the fast and agile warships. The Tri of Trireme refers to the three tiers of rowers, which gave their ships their compact yet versatile nature. They're made out of wood, but they had this bronze rowing prow at the end that you can just about make out. They were manned by about 200 men, 170 of which were rowers, and then there were about 30 mariners and archers for the combat. They'd row in unison, and commands were issued by a helmsman, and they were synchronised by a rowing master or sometimes a flutist. Persian ships by comparison were much larger, with 4 banks of rowers and in some cases 50 oared ships. The Persian tactic was to overwhelm with sheer size and numbers, but the Greeks were able to negate this with the geography of Salamis. So I'm going to do my best to recreate the battle, but I can only work with what the game gives me. For example, there are no Persian ships in this game, so I'm going to have to attack Athenian ships. And also the fighting would take place far closer into Salamis, where it's really narrow here. But I can't get any of the Athenian ships to dock in here, so we're just going to have to fight out here. So as I've just tried to demonstrate on the map, Salamis was the perfect place for the Greek navy to fight the Persians. Similarly to Thermopylae, the narrow space allowed for only a few Persian ships to enter and fight at any one time. When they were in position, the Greeks could easily ram the Persian ships, as I'm trying to do here. The ramming prow you can see at the front of the ship is known as an embolon, and the idea was to try and hit the enemy ships at the hull, which was their weakest point. This would then immobilise the enemy ships, damaging their banks of rowers or puncturing holes and sinking the ships. The Greek triremes are far faster and more mobile than the Persians, which allowed them to ram and regroup with ease. Once the ship was rammed, Greek marines and soldiers could board the enemy vessel and engage in close quarter combat. The Greeks did use archers, as you can see me using here throughout this engagement, and the idea is to rain down arrows onto the enemy ships as we close in the distance. Fire arrows were certainly part of naval warfare, but it's up for debate if this actually happened at Salamis due to the confined space and the subsequent risk of setting your own ships on fire. However, ultimately, using arrows was more of a Persian tactic, as they had bigger numbers on their ships and could thus utilise more men. The Greeks were focused more on ramming the Persian ships. Once the Greeks had broken through the Persian line, they could then quickly steer around and attack the Persians from behind, easily outflanking them. The Greeks were also far better at understanding the currents and the weather here at Salamis, which made it far easier for them to stay in formation. The Greeks desperately needed to use whatever advantage they could against the Persians, as they were so heavily outnumbered. Estimates suggest that the Greek fleet was around 300 ships, made up predominantly of Athenian ships, but also others from other Greek city-states, whilst the Persians had around 800 to 1,200 ships in their fleet. However, the Persian ships fared much better in open sea, so it took some trickery to get the Persians into the narrow bay at Salamis. Accordingly, Themistocles attempted to deceive Xerxes by sending a secret message, pretending to betray the Greeks. He suggests that the Greeks are on the verge of retreating, and Xerxes could easily defeat them if he moved quickly. This deception then lured the Persian fleet into the narrow straits at Salamis, where their larger ships would be less effective. Essentially, Xerxes thought he was going to trap the Greek fleet here. To add to this deception, the Greeks then feigned a retreat to further lure the Persians in. Now, the Persian fleet suffered a crushing defeat here at Salamis, and though we don't have the exact numbers, we know that this made a sizable dent in their fleet, and this weakened Xerxes' campaign as he put much store in trying to take the rest of Greece by sea. Without a sizable navy, he is vulnerable to counterattack and isolation. So following on from this defeat, Xerxes retreated with a large portion of his forces back to Asia Minor, leaving his general Mardonius behind, who led the Battle of Plataea in the following year. But it was here that the Persian forces were finally decisively defeated on land. This was a major morale boost for the Greeks and led to further Greek unity. After the Persian invasions, the Delian League was set up to safeguard from another Persian threat, though Athens quickly becomes the leader of this league and uses it as a foundation for its own empire, diverting funds to rebuild Athens after it had been sacked prior to the battle when the Athenians had evacuated their city. So this concludes our video on the Battle of Salamis. Please do consider dropping a like and subscribe to help the channel grow. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you guys all in the next one.